to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinkin' Bros, kids. Got a fine Monday afternoon. If you're like me and went hard all weekend, you need to realign yourself. And who better to do that with than Aaron Alexander? Welcome to the show, my man. How are you?
I'm well.
Are you?
Thanks for making this
Or
happen.
do you have to say that? Like, do you have to say that?
I usually try to just keep it short in the beginning, you know? I start expectations low.
You're one of those people that's so positive that I'm like, he's got to be lying, dude. You've got to be fucking lying.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. And people that are like too well organized with their lawns.
Yeah.
You know,
they're serial killers.
I'm not into that.
Yeah. They save their toenails in a fucking
just
bag
leave
in the
like
closet.
one patch of grass open.
Yeah, I agree.
That's any good sociopath knows that's the move.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Aaron's got a new book out, The Align Method, which we're going to get into here in a second. You also have a huge podcast, the Align podcast. I feel like without knowing you, you're best friends with Aubrey Marcus. Yes or no?
He's a close friend. Are you serious? Are you being serious right now?
I want to know how close. Okay, when somebody is in the opening mentions of a book here is like, this book is amazing, because I'm going to go through them here. Okay,
yeah, sure.
We won't start with Aubrey, but we'll end with Aubrey.
Reasonable, yeah.
Laird Hamilton.
Yeah.
How do you know Laird Hamilton? First of all,
Laird, I think just through like the whole fitness, biohacking, sport grapevine, you know, just mutual friends.
Have you worked with him personally? Because that guy, I feel like, is a man among men, where it's like he's a god. He's some sort of water god that we just don't really have a meaning for yet. But if there is an Aquaman type character in real life, it's probably Laird.
Yeah, he's like every dude's, at least for me, like I'm immensely grateful to have a relation to Laird and Gabby, because they're people that I looked up to immensely as like a teenager. And so I actually used to work at a restaurant called Colleen's in Maui, Hawaii. And so I was like a 18-year-old just dirtbag trying to surf, and I was making salads at this restaurant. And Laird would come into the restaurant with Gabby, and the whole restaurant would like go silent when he comes in. You know, and I'm like frantically, nervously, like hoping I don't fuck up his niçoise salad. And to come to a point, you know, whatever that is, 18, 15, 16, 17 years later, for him to be like the primary contributor to the front blurb on the book.
He's a guy you don't want to disappoint, I feel like. Even if you don't know him, you're just like, oh, shit, that's Laird Hamilton.
Yeah.
I don't want to disappoint Laird.
I'm glad that people like that exist on the planet.
Same, they're just not me.
No, not me either.
No, and it's, you look up to guys like that. Another one of our buddies, Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy is a guy like that too, where I'm just like, you're just built different, dude. Like, you're not like the rest of us.
I think it's just thriving on challenge. So it's like I have some friends that they have a brand called Seek Discomfort, and I think it's just an amazing motto in general. And it's just
Dan says that all the time on this show.
Yeah. So it's a reconfiguration of what you enjoy. If what you think you enjoy is just the continual seeking of comfort, then you'll probably have a pretty like normal life.
Sure.
But it's just a matter of a perception shift that we all have access to be like, oh, like I actually, when it's hard, I don't tell myself the story like to get away. I actually lean into that. And I think people like Kennedy and Laird, that's kind of their thing.
Well, for most people, discomfort is a means to an end. And I think the difference between when I say most people, most motivated people, discomfort is a means to an end. For a lot of people, it's something to be avoided altogether, especially these days. For extraordinary people, I don't think it's necessarily different. They see discomfort as a means to an end as well. They just don't ever, there's no end state for them. It's not like, all right, I've got my house and my family now I'm done.
Yep.
Right? It's like, what's the next thing?
Yep.
So
somebody spiritual, I don't remember who it was exactly, but they said that my secret is I don't mind what happens.
Dalai Lama.
Yeah, it was a Dalai freaking Lama.
And
Thank you.
Then he disrobed.
Nice.
And then, he got into a hot tub.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the shit. I think about that quote, oddly, probably, not deeply enough because I don't know who actually said it, but I think about that quite regularly. Because it's most scenarios, if we're in a place of complaining or like victimizing ourselves, woe is me, it's literally just a perception shift away of like, what if I embraced this moment? Or what if I accepted this moment? And you get like Ram Dass, more spiritual shit, and be like, be with what is.
Right.
If you've ever done, sorry for interrupting you, if you've ever done psychedelics, are you guys
Are you
done
kidding?
any kind of psychedelics in your world?
He's probably on psychedelics right now.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, that was so in relation to Aubrey, we just got back from a Costa Rica trip.
Oh,
may
boy.
may or may not have involved psychedelics. And that was a part of the experience that I've learned on repeat with psychedelics over the years is if you can step up to the task of just being with whatever the fuck is, typically on the other side of that, all the things that you think you want and the sensations and the feelings and all of that, it's on the other side of coming into acceptance of whatever painful shit is happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fundamental premise of the psychology of human beings is that delayed gratification is probably one of the more important things you can learn to manage in your life, right? The thing that I learned from psychedelics, two things actually. One, this isn't real and this won't last forever. Like those are the two core things I learned very early on. And I think one of the most important things that any human being, no matter what they're going through, how comfortable or not comfortable they are, one of the most important things you can know down to your very core is that you can't control the outcome of any of this, right? Correct. Like that, if you have to admit that to yourself. That doesn't mean don't try. It just means failure is just something you tried and it didn't work, and now there's the next attempt, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, but you can't control the outcome. You can't make someone love you. You can't make the stock market, well, unless you're the federal government, maybe. But you can't make the stock market do what you want. You can't make, houses be cheaper. You can't solve inflation by wishing it. You can't stop war by wishing it. But you can do what you can do, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like embracing challenges, like you were talking about earlier. I do that creatively. Because physically, I've never been one of those people who enjoys like a fucking 5-mile run or anything like that. Yeah. I've never enjoyed an experience at the gym. It's part of my day, probably 4 to 5 days a week, but I don't enjoy it. Whereas creatively, doing podcasts every day or writing every day, that is a challenge for me that I enjoy, especially when you're on daily like this. You've got to embrace the monotony of, hey, you're doing 2 to 3 shows a day across the board, and you have to embrace your guests and who you're talking to and the subjects because we're someone else's entertainment every single day. And I love that challenge on a daily basis because we've been doing this for about 7 years now at this point. Yeah. And I still love coming in every day where it's like, all right, how do you make the best show possible for everybody else who is entrusted that when they listen to you, they're going to get something interesting on their drive to work or on their drive home. Yeah. That's what I enjoy. Whereas I look at a Laird Hamilton or a Tim Kennedy, those are physical challenges where you're just like, holy shit, I can't do that.
Well, they're like different. You've heard like hive mind mentality, or even just the concept of hives in general, or ant colonies, or any of that. Every ant doesn't do the same task. And if every ant was a soldier, or every ant was like an investigator seeking out new territory, every ant was right, it would be a shitty colony. It wouldn't function. And so I think we, as a culture, we have these exposure to these images on social media, or fronts of covers of magazines, etc. This idea of who we're supposed to be, and then within that, there can be friction between what our inherent gifts are and what we think we're supposed to do because it's what we're exposed to all the fucking time.
I think that me personally, I was really good at figuring out what my gifts were at a very young age and then building towards that to the future, whereas I don't think a lot of people know what they're doing with their lives until their mid to late 20s probably of what they actually want to do in life. Yeah. Whereas embracing different physical challenges just isn't my jam.
Well, if all of your information is coming from the outside in and there's minimal to no access to what's happening from the inside out, it's going to be a very confusing life to live.
Oh, yeah.
And so if all of your information is like, okay, that teacher said I should do that girlfriend said I should be that magazine said I should be that, and there's never really any bandwidth or space or availability to have any kind of like inner conversation, you're just like a fucking pinball. Yeah, and you just get slapped around and you hope you land in a good place.
People are extremely uncomfortable with uncertainty as well, maybe more so than anything else. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, certainly they focus on like physical needs like shelter and food and shit like that, but it is the worry over not having them that causes the psychological distress, not the not having them. You know what I mean? So most people are more comfortable with a fake, complete like management of what's happening in their life, which is to say, this is what it is, and I can't do anything about it, which is also not true, by the way. I mean, you may not be, you may not have any proclivity towards achieving things athletically just for their own sake, but that doesn't mean you can't do athletic shit, right?
No, and I do all the time.
It also doesn't mean that you wouldn't benefit from doing it.
No, completely. And I realize that I benefit from it. I just don't enjoy it, whereas I enjoy playing sports more, things like that. However, as you get older, you can't do it as much because you make hard cuts and then an ACL blows out. You ever gone to the Y for a pickup game? Any time past age 30, 5 minutes, somebody's going down with a blown ACL, and you're just like, all right, sweet, man.
So
I can't do this anymore.
That I would respectfully challenge you on the language of you.
You want to go one-on-one?
You can't do it. You can't do it. Yes, and you can't do it as much. Because I think that'd be great. But the story or idea that you can't do it as much past an age, that becomes a reconfirmation and it becomes true. And then an individual, I would suggest, because we don't want to be wrong, will seek to confirm our bias, whether it's towards some broken down ACL bullshit or whether it's some like longevity conversation.
I look at facts, my man, and I'll tell you this, because in LA, there's this celebrity basketball league. I'm sure you've read about it. DiCaprio and all those guys playing it. Yeah. I got asked to sub in one night when somebody was out, and I got to play against those guys.
Cool.
Full court, referees, full periods, everything, where I was just like, oh shit, this is the same when I was in high school, right? Out of everyone was just gassed by maybe 4 minutes into the game. The final score, no lie, 28-26. And this, you're with adults who are wearing, it's sponsored by the NBA jerseys, the whole shit, right?
Yeah.
28-26. Yep. The only reason we won is because I was barely able to pull it together to block a shot at the buzzer, and that was it. And when I looked up the score, I thought it was a fucking champion. And then it was 28-26.
That's a strong soccer game, though.
Yeah, right?
That's a strong score.
That's a high-scoring baseball game, like AA or something. Not a grown-ups game of basketball.
No, that's like high school girls basketball.
Yes,
maybe.
it was terrible. It was terrible.
JV.
Yeah, it was terrible. One guy was just like, "Oh no, I'll never play again. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I just can't fucking breathe. I'll never play again."
So there's two people that come to mind. There's a gal called Dr. Ellen Langer, who she was a professor, I think, at Harvard for a very long time, and she wrote a book called Counterclockwise. I've done a podcast with her a couple years ago or so, and in her book Counterclockwise, one of the things that one of the bits of research that she and her team conducted was a thing where they brought a bunch of older folks. It was like between like age 60 and 80, and she brought them into a hotel setting, and she had them there as kind of like a retreat. That she had them there for a week, and in that time frame, she turned the clocks back figuratively 20 years. And so she made the calendars go back 20 years. She made the news on the TV from 20 years ago, the basketball or baseball games, the politicians.
That's cool.
The art, the style of the couches, everything. And what she found in that experience of these elderly individuals, just essentially like playing what would it be like if we were 20 years younger, what she found is their vision started to progress. They had better vision. The length of their digits, of their fingers, literally got longer. So any kind of osteoarthritis they were experiencing literally started to diminish. Their inflammation in their body and in their joints diminished as a product of the belief that they're young again. And there was a bunch of other stuff that happened as well.
That's fascinating.
So that's one thing that's interesting. There's another. I just did another podcast with a gal called Dr. Becca Levy, who she graduated from Harvard with a master's in psychology. She's a professor at Stanford University teaching psychology and particularly gerontology, which I believe is like the study of
old bitches.
It's the psychology of old bitches, I believe.
Yeah. Old Jerry's.
And so
Geriatric
some of the research that they had conducted was taking polls of people at age, it was like in and around age 30, and it was their perception of aging. What does aging mean to you? Does aging mean you just get old and shitty and everything starts to fall apart and you go into entropy? Is aging like kind of awesome because you get better at life, or it's at least fine or something that you accept? And they found that people that had negative, in quotations, perceptions of aging in their 30s, by the time they got to age 60, they had, I believe it was 2 times the likelihood of having cardiovascular disease. If they were running the idea that aging is a travesty, it sucks, I'm just going to get shittier 30 years ago. So I think that there's a combination of perception being a massive driver for the production of ourselves at a structural, cellular, all the levels. And then there's also the objective reality of you also need to do shit.
Yeah, like eat babies.
Yeah,
that stem
toddler
cell,
blood.
That stem cell shit is no joke. Like in the natural world, radiation and a food source of whatever it happens to be, whether it's chlorophyll for plants or protein for human beings, that process of cell splitting and blah, 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 I'm not going to go into the whole fucking thing, but it deteriorates over time, right? There's going to be some point in human history where we start to produce something similar to a stem cell that will make us age much less or much slower, or maybe not at all, right? I mean, theoretically, that is all possible.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So if you take into account the mindset part, which definitely, I mean, there's double-blind lab studies that show perception has a massive benefit.
Yeah, mountains of research.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. There's like 60, 70 years worth of this research. When you add the leaps we've made physically in physical science, I mean, there's scientists have isolated in a lab, of course, not something easily to replicate, but they've literally unaged a cell at this point, right? Like, I think it was in 2019 when that paper came out, so they probably did the research in 2016, something like that. They literally made a cell, I guess it's technically not younger, obviously, but they reversed time for that cell.
Yeah, lengthening telomeres or reversing what our objective measurement of an aged cell.
And
or
you can get this
genetics.
you can get this test done to see what your actual biological age is, right? Not your chronological age, but what shape are your cells in a condition of you're 65 years old, 65-year-old man?
Yeah, I just turned 33, by the way.
Or
nice. Respect.
You know,
you look great.
Thank you. Yeah, same age as Jesus.
But you could pick these. It's almost like facial features that can tell you something about a person based on someone's attitude. You can guess with a pretty decent accuracy how they're going to score on this biological age test, right? Like, just you can tell the type of people that would fucking score well on it. You could tell.
I think I would. I'm one of those people who I enjoy every single day, or I try to, and I try to make the best out of it. And I enjoy challenges like new companies and, again, new shows, new guests like I've never met you before. And I'm excited to sit down and talk with you today. I've never celebrated my birthday. Matter of fact, like on the big milestone birthdays, like 21, right? I dreaded it because I knew I had to go out and take like 30 shots that night. And I was like, all right, cool, this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to take you out to do it. But I don't really celebrate birthdays because it's just like, all right, well, great. There's other things that are going on that day that are more exciting than
I honestly don't remember how old I am half the time.
I don't either.
Like I
just don't think about it.
In my head, I still feel like I'm 25 years old, right? Like
Same.
And I think it's because I was in the military then, and I just felt invincible the whole time, and now I just feel like that. Although I do get injuries all the time, stupid shit. It's not about like I think I'm not prone to injury or susceptible to it, I guess. I just never feel like I'm old.
See, I don't unless I'm in some physical activity against my children. I coach all their games. Obviously, you see the trophy behind me. Back-to-back soccer coach champion for children. Whatever, dude. I'm probably the best in the biz.
I will dominate your children. Me against a team of sevens or however.
I'm glad you brought that up. So this is the last time I actually felt old. Was the last scrimmage before the championship game. They usually do dads versus sons, right? And so you go out and play, and this one dad was super hyped about it. He was like, let's go. He was a fucking unbelievable soccer player, and I think he played college or something like that. maybe 4 to 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. And even though we're destroying these 8-year-old kids, I just wanted it to be over. It was 1st to 5, and I'm like, let's just score as fast as we can and move on. Like, holy shit, I cannot move.
I'll score from midfield on those little bitches.
That was what we were doing towards the end, but like just moving physically side to side like that, not having done it in cleats for a very, very long time, where you're just like, oh shit, dude. This is crazy.
Well, that's something we can talk about. We can spin this now from theory and mindset into functional fitness, right? Because before your muscles will break down, your joints, tendons, and ligaments will break down if not treated properly.
Sure.
So you're an expert in this sort of thing.
Well, so what you guys, so as you were saying, like shuffling and being able to go side to side, or even being able to like sprint, just the concept of unnecessary
sprinting,
quick twitch,
just moving forward well.
Did you watch Brendan Schaub sprint? What was it? Was it a 40-yard dash, Giorgio?
He was racing Chappelle Lacey, who was a collegiate cheerleader and just kind of like a freak athlete in general.
Oh yeah.
And Brendan, being a very high caliber athlete himself, like your body and your mind still knows what it's like to do those things, but your hamstrings haven't been ready for that in so long.
Yeah, he popped both of them, right?
Yeah. And that's what it was like.
Run?
Oh, in the run. And that's what it felt like playing soccer against kids, where in your mind, you're like, oh, dude, I'll house these kids and it'll be easy.
Yeah, but this is how evolution works, right? So for every piece of energy spent, there's a price to pay. There's a cost somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So you might develop, it's almost like if you think about losing one of your 5 senses and the other ones make up for it, this is what nature does. You know what I mean? So if you don't feed that ability, it goes away. There aren't a whole lot of things that are completely sustainable without practice. Like most of these things are perishable.
Oh, I agree.
Like pretty quickly too. Like you take a year off of doing something, and you have to relearn the whole goddamn thing.
Well, one of this kind of strange aberrations of modern fitness culture, in quotations, is the veering towards like almost exclusive sagittal plane based movement. Sagittal plane being both arms going forward, both legs going down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I do rows, I do bench press, I do squat, both feet in the same position. I do military press.
But there's not a whole lot of trunk rotation in any of those.
There's not a lot of trunk rotation. There's not a lot of association.
Which, by the way, is one of the more important movements in all of athleticism.
Everything you do that matters.
I was showing Bob.
Except for fitness.
Last week on the baseball show, I was telling Bob about if you watch Trout or Pujols or somebody like that swing in slow motion, I think it's about 1/32,000th of a second. So, like, not a whole lot of time.
Sure. Their
back knee and their fucking front hip start to rotate before their hands even move, like when they're swinging. Same thing happens with good pitchers, too, right? That's why the difference between a really good hitter for a little while and a great hitter for a long time is that it's utilizing that trunk rotation. You know what I mean?
And utilizing your body's own inherent elasticity in order to be able to essentially, it's like an analogy would be, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but if we're actively trying to breathe, I'm trying to breathe. Mm-hmm. It's like an uncomfortable, arduous, it just doesn't feel good. When you feel, say you just got a really great massage or acupuncture or you did yoga or you went swim, it's just something, you did a bunch of psychedelics, did a bunch of ketamine, whatever the thing is to cause your nervous system to just chill and relax. Mm-hmm. Your body has this inherent knowing of just how to move with ease. Mm. And have you guys ever experienced that sensation with breathing where it's like, wow, it feels really like, it's almost like I'm being breathed.
Yeah, I've never been able to do it myself, but I've talked to Kotler about it a lot.
Yeah,
he can. By the way, he's also one of the people who.
Yeah, I was just did a podcast.
We had him on about a month ago.
He's a sweetie.
He's a good dude.
Great guy.
Yeah, so it's that process of getting out, and that might have been a little bit too out there of an analogy, but maybe 12 people have experienced that type of sensation. Hopefully more than that.
But they can get themselves to the same spot that ketamine can get them just by switching up their breathing patterns.
Sure,
it's fucked up.
Yeah, I think I've experienced it once, and it was at the end of a really long year where you're waiting for this vacation period to happen, and I was sitting on a beach, and I think that's literally the only time in my life where I was just like, holy shit, I got through this year.
That sensation.
Yes.
And so that sensation can also be found in running. or sprinting, or throwing a baseball, or
No,
throwing
I've never
an axe.
found it
or,
in running.
I know, very few people do, but most people that get into running, they have that like runner's high type experience where it almost feels like you're being run. You're being breathed, you're being run. You're just tapping into your body's inherent capacity for this elastic rebound effect. That's the shit. Like if we can get into that space with more regularity, that's what you're doing all day when you're walking, when you're talking, when you're moving around. Your body has this natural elasticity to it. But in order to be able to tap into that, you need to move the way that you move into those native patterns that your body's been moving into since, for millennia.
But how do you do that when we're all so busy with businesses, kids, things like that? How do you find the time in the day? And what would you recommend is like a proper time to set aside for something like that, to focus on it?
I wouldn't recommend setting aside time. I would recommend changing your environment or changing your perception so that it's not a new to-do list. It's embedded into who you are and how you move throughout your daily life. So that was the whole function of my book, and most anything that I talk about or care about, it's not providing people with another to-do list. It's how do we start to integrate this into while you're at work having a conversation, examples of something that you could do for, just singular, a few tips. One, just bring windows into your environment. So start paying attention to the lighting that you're exposed to. So different types of light.
Well, for us, we have to black out the windows because of sets, cameras, everything else. So I don't see the light for... I got that comment at the fucking White House the other day. They looked at these pictures and they were like, Jesus Christ, you're white as shit. And I was like, that's the one thing you took away from this? And I was like, we sit in a studio all day. I don't see the sunlight until... 6:30 probably?
Yeah, it would be in your favor. So perhaps you could bring like a grow light into here. I don't think you're going to actually do that, but something where you're actually getting more of that full spectrum light like you'd get from the sun to simulate, or just take breaks and go the freak outside every now and again.
You need to spend at least 30 minutes in the sun every single day.
I agree.
And I would recommend 30 minutes in the sun in like bouts throughout the day. So as opposed to just one moment.
Left for 30 minutes in the middle of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. So would I.
But you know what? The really interesting thing about this is that human beings have only been experiencing unnatural light for about 120 years.
Yep.
Like it was
since Edison and Tesla.
Yeah, it was fire before that, right?
Right.
And we've only experienced light at nighttime for what, 300 or 400 years,
right,
since people started using candles at night for the most part. Our brains are not good with this stuff. It's why these phones have completely fucked up the way our brains work.
I 100% agree.
Well, fire, light, candles, all of that stuff is completely fine. So that's we're getting that. It would be like long wave light form, so more into those like reds and oranges. It's soothing for the nervous system.
Yeah, blue light fucks you up though.
If you're exposed to it in inopportune times, which is when your body is starting to set you up to, start to release melatonin and the various different hormones and chemicals to bring you into a downregulated sleep state. You're getting prepped to go to sleep. And so if you're getting those high frequency bandwidths of light coming more up into the blues, then in that time frame, it's sending a signal to your physiology that it's time to wake up. So if you're looking at your cell phone before you go to bed, you're watching your stories on TV, whatever, and you have a blue lit screen, like most any would be. An option for that is you could get some blue blocking glasses. You could just have better sleep hygiene, and maybe read a book before going to bed or something of the sort. Use a salt lamp before going to bed. Light candles.
Forgive me, what's a salt lamp?
Oh, it's just one of those lamps. It's just got a ball of salt around it. You ever seen it? They're kind of
pink.
like
It kind of looks like a crystal.
Like pink Himalayan salt thing.
Yeah,
doesn't need to be that. It's just an example of something that's kind of cool. It's
pull up a pic of that, Bob. Let's see what a salt lamp is.
If you see one of these in a girl's room, she's fucking.
She's down to fuck.
Yeah,
she's down to fuck. Yeah. And so that's something that I would say this a lot of things I'm saying throughout this probably sound ridiculous, but if you're with a girl, you're dating a girl, she's somebody you care about, you want to get laid, you'd probably romance her. The way that you do that is you'd set the mood, so you'd adjust the lighting in the room, you'd adjust the soundscape in the room, what kind of sound do you have in the background, you'd adjust maybe the textures that she's exposed to, you'd have like this, maybe you'd adjust the smells in the room, be like, oh man, I'm kind of getting turned on in this place. Right. Like my libido is going up just by existing in this environment. Like I feel more sensual and connected. So if we could start to take a little bit of the way that we're willing to treat somebody else for, the sake of coitus, or whatever, and start to implement some of that with ourselves, I think our physiology would thank us.
Okay.
I know that might be a little bit out there of an idea, but
Not at all,
the
because
takeaway would be just tone the lights down. Long spectrum light, 2 hours before bed. Long spectrum being the reds, essentially.
Yeah,
and that's like literally long. I don't know. We talk about physics from time to time, but light is a wave, just like sound. And this is blue, and this is red.
That's
right.
correct.
That's why. That's what redshift is. That's how we know the universe is expanding, right? Because you're seeing the tail end. It's moving away from you, and as it moves away from you, the wave gets longer, and as it's coming towards you, it gets shorter.
Yep.
So blue light it's really, really bad. Like, we hadn't experienced artificial blue light ever until about 120 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, artificial blue light in a major way until like 60 years ago.
Blue light is really good during the day.
Nitrogen
and in the morning.
Nitrogen reflecting sunlight into your eyeballs is really good.
Really,
But
really good. Like
Blue,
really important.
artificial blue light is not good.
Yeah, and so both of like darkness, like light, are equally valuable. So we can't villainize one side just because we've like butchered the blue light side so much that now it's like, oh, like pendulum swing, like get out of the blue. It's like, no. Like that's also equally broken.
Yeah.
Get all the blue.
No, the blue.
Just it's about timing.
Natural blue light regulates testosterone, right? It regulates serotonin, oxytocin, all this stuff that you use during the daytime, pretty much, right? It regulates your mood, your diet, like or not your diet, but your hunger and all this stuff.
And then you said it as well with it being it's all wavelengths. So light, like sound, they interact with your autonomic nervous system in similar ways. So there's certain sounds that you might be around. Say someone, whatever, some kind of like fast tempo, house, high pitched type music before you go to bed. Probably not going to be the most conducive thing for rest. So that's going to be that high frequency.
Yeah,
right.
Just vibing.
Yeah.
Just vibing.
But a didgeridoo. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, didgeridoo for the long exhalations actually be really supportive before bed. But
yeah, probably.
But so sound is a similar thing. Like all of these, we have. And this is the last section of my book. I go into your various different senses and the way that we can access them for better physiological and structural development. And so light is one of them. Your visual perception is one of them, and the other one is the acoustic spectrum. Just the way that you can tune your autonomic state through the different frequencies of light, you can do the exact same thing with the frequencies of sound.
He's not saying anything crazy here, by the way. This is Pavlov's dog, right?
No,
Pavlov was a piece of shit, and he vivisected dogs and whatever, but I mean, the experiment's kind of fucked up. He drilled a hole in their jaw right here and put a pipe in it, and he just made the sound of food hitting a bowl, and they would drool immediately, right?
Right.
Like you have the same response to sound as dogs do.
Classic conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so both of those would be, as far as what are things that we can start to implement without adding anything, because we already have like long enough to-do lists. One would be paying attention to the frequencies of light and the timing of them. The other one would be paying attention to the frequencies of sound. So late evening, maybe get like a water, like a fountain thing, get like the sound of, a babbling brook in your house, or the sound of maybe a fire. If you don't have a fireplace in your house, which few people do, I don't.
Sure.
I don't myself, but I do have a flat screen TV, and I have access to YouTube, and I can put on the fire crackling YouTube channel that lasts for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And now my background on my wall is just this sound of crackling of a fire. So that for millennia, you sitting around with your homies around a crackling fire has been embedded into your genetics, I would suggest, for a very long time, to suggest like,
well, for 25,000+ years at least.
Right.
Like that's
Since the
not
origination
an
of fire.
assumption. That's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
And you can with these smart TVs these days, you can go in and create a visual profile that eliminates the blue light, right? There's a lot of ways to get around this stuff. It's not like you have to go live in a fucking hut somewhere. Like,
no.
Modern technology has actually made it easy. They've made it easier to fix the problems they've caused in a lot of ways, but people just don't think about it.
You just need to think about it.
Yeah.
So at one point in the not so recent past, your just existence in this like natural in quotations environment would essentially like tune your body to be healthy, because that's where you originated from. Like, you've evolved through nature. So nature, it's one congruent road. You know, it's like it's one thing. Just hunt and gather and build shelter and perceive weather and inclement. You know, just like by your existence, it kind of tunes the body. You're getting up and down off of the ground with regularity. It just works. Since we've kind of pulled ourselves out of that, in a sense, like conquered nature in quotations, now we need to reintegrate those natural lifestyle choices into our modern environment. So we need to be smart. Like, we need to do some research. We need to listen to some podcasts. We need to read some books. We need to hang around people they just seem quite healthy, you know, and just like ask them questions. Like, what are you doing?
One of your advanced praises in here, the book, is Aubrey Marcus.
Oh boy.
I bet you the two of you guys, with just the conversation, Aubrey's been on the show.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Just the way both of you are speaking, the pussy you guys have gotten is probably insane. Absolutely insane. I'm going to be honest. If I'm headed out to a bar in Austin, you're probably top two that I'm taking out with me tonight.
I appreciate that.
Just because you're able to reel. I mean, just absolutely reel.
Don't let me talk.
Have you? Yeah. No, not at all. Like, even talking to you before the show, I was like, shit, I'm in. Like, I'll let this guy fuck me. Let's go.
I appreciate that.
Have you gotten into some deep shit with Aubrey?
That's good.
Because he's not shy
Well, he
about
just got back from
having
Costa Rica.
threesomes and you know, sexual exploration.
I've never had a threesome with Aubrey, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
But have you
Just
been
to
in
be
the
clear.
same room and seen him fuck?
Not yet.
We'll get there.
I feel like we're close. We've talked about it.
I feel like we could do it. I feel like here's the place to do it, you know?
I don't know. Costa Rica would probably be the place to do it.
Yeah.
Well, that was like a spirit. We were doing like ayahuasca.
Is that what you guys are doing down there?
A part of the dieta, as they call it. The
How was your
diet, is to not have
experience? Did you
sex.
shit your brains out, or?
I never shat. I almost vomited the first night, and I had like what could be considered. It felt like the concept of purging. Have you guys ever done ayahuasca?
I have.
No, so I have not, and it's one of those things on a to-do list. But I want to wait till my kids are a little older.
Okay, why?
So I don't freak out. I don't want to freak out thinking about a newborn.
Yeah.
My wife is due tomorrow, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah, so the phone, if you see it lighting up.
You're out of here.
No, not that.
Yeah.
Like, she's fine. Like,
Yeah.
she'll make it through the show.
Yeah.
But it's relatives wanting to know, is the baby out yet? The baby out yet? It's like, no, baby's, we're good. If she lights it up, then yeah, I'll step
Dan,
out
how was
for a
your
second.
experience with ayahuasca?
It was good. I vomited quite a bit. I've got my stomach is pretty sensitive to psychotropic drugs. Like every time I've done mescaline, I've fucking puked for the first 45 minutes once it kicked in. But afterwards, I agree with you. After the first one, the first night, I didn't really have the same stomach discomfort after that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, I don't really get it from mushrooms anymore. I used
Yeah.
to when I was younger, but not anymore.
Did you experience any kind of like? Did you get some information, some downloads?
Well, I've been doing
Some
acid
healings.
since I was 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I started really early doing mostly acid, but I kind of got into mushrooms in high school as well. So not at that point, no. And by the time I did ayahuasca, I was I'd been doing it for a long time, and I already, as I mentioned before, that idea that this isn't real, this won't last forever. Now, DMT is different, right, for me at least, because DMT I've been able to completely shut off my brain before. I have to go pretty deep, like multiple 8 to 10 second hits on DMT.
Did you drink enough ayahuasca?
I mean, I had a pretty good bit. I got whatever they fucking gave me. I don't know. I assume they gave me the right amount. I mean, they do it based on like body weight and all this other bullshit. Like, and they knew my history, so it wasn't like I was hiding to obfuscate anything.
Do you have any experience of like a consciousness of sorts outside of yourself? Like a lot of people talk about that. There's like mother ayahuasca, you know, they feel like there's something there like working with you or on you or however you say it.
I don't know if I would have given it a name
I typically wouldn't either.
Like maybe I didn't think of it as a body somewhere. It just seemed like natural processes to me, right? Like I was thinking about the way my blood was moving through my body and the way at some point my hearing starts vibrating, and I'm like, that's really interesting because technically noise is a vibration caused by waves bouncing off shit, and then my brain just goes fucking off in it. But I'm like, every single time I've gotten that deep, with ayahuasca or with DMT, my brain always starts like going hardcore analysis on natural processes, stuff that I'm experiencing in the moment. I don't know why. It hasn't really been dealing with psychological trauma or any of that bullshit. It's mostly been about that, like the natural world.
DMT is kind of convenient, particularly I'd say like the 5-MeO, like the bufo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're
the
both
toad.
convenient, but yeah.
Well,
the toad is
convenient because it rips you into a state of surrender if you do enough immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no navigation really. The navigation in ayahuasca experience is like, typically for me at least, there's like an hour of blasting through the atmosphere, and there's a lot of friction for me, and I'm like, it's like this is a lot, man, and then it's like, you break out into the orbit, and suddenly there's not all the friction of the atmosphere, and you're like in the psychedelic state, and it's like, okay, like now, okay, I feel safe, and then all the things. Whereas DMT, it's like the blast off through the atmosphere is like 2 seconds, and then you're in it, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I've never. I guess I haven't really tried to create it, but I've heard people have. Panic isn't the right word for it, but maybe like a short-term existential crisis.
Or just resistance.
Yeah, but I just had done so many psychotropic drugs up until that point. Some of the physical stuff, like I was trying not to vomit for sure, right? And that captured my attention for some amount of time. Yeah, like it kind of took me out of it actually a little bit.
I feel like much of religion that we experience today, such as Christianity, is borrowing from a lot of the experiences and practices and we as a people in like Greece and Athens and Egypt and all around the world, they would have these visions and these experiences through the psychedelic state.
Well, even Christianity, I mean, John the Revelator was exiled on an island that was pretty well known for its psychotropic natural growing plants, right? So people, the theory is that, and I think Terence McKenna mentioned this in Fruit of the Gods or whatever that book is, Fruit of the Gods, that John was more than likely high off his ass when he wrote that book.
Sure.
Right? I mean, if you think about it, or if you just read it and it's like, oh, okay, there's fucking kind of a really rudimentary description of a helicopter in there, like, that's weird. Obviously, there's no time travel involved, so this dude was like seeing shit in his head. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's pretty interesting.
Have you heard of the Eleusinian mysteries?
Yeah, we talked with Kotler a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of I just find it so interesting that when you go to church, and you go and you have like these. I grew up very Christian, and I still have
Catholic.
No, it was like non-denominational, but I was definitely going to church and hands up overhead and having hot like holy revivals and like really trying to get into it.
Sure.
But I always felt like there was some dissonance, like I was trying, like I was doing an act, and I never really felt like I was actually connecting to any higher God thing. It was more of like this obligatory fear of going to hell, which I think probably resonates with some people, because it was very much my experience. And then, but I believe that a lot of that, and if people were to look into like the Eleusinian mysteries or like any of that stuff, and from like that was like, I believe it was like 2,500 years ago. It was like 5th century BC.
Who wrote the book on that? It came out like in 2016, maybe. Yeah, Jared gave it to me. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I'm spacing the guy's name right now.
But it was like
Dave.
It's basically Dave Aleutian. It's like this concoction that they used to fucking dose up with back in the day, right?
Yeah. The suggestion is that they were drinking ergotized beer, which
ergot is LSD.
That's LSD. So that's like the original form. But similar stories with the Salem witch trials. That was during a time of, I think it was like a late frost, and what had happened periodically throughout history is this ergot would grow on the crops, and then would essentially like Timothy Leary, dose the community,
like a heroic dose of the entire community.
Yeah. And so then within that, when there's a bit of a battle or a conflict between like power, greed, like who's the boss here? It's like, okay, is the church the boss, or is you guys going and having your cult-like ceremonies where you go into your teepee and like commune with God without us? Right. It's like, no, we're not into that. Like, we're gonna kill you.
That's actually been the primary negative influence from the marriage of state and religion against common folk for as long as we've had religion, right? It's controlling access to God. Like
Yeah.
Italy, Rome tried to do it by keeping everybody stupid. Yep. Like nobody learned how to read, and the Bible up until 1511, I believe, was only translated in Latin. So if you wanted God and everybody told you needed it, you had to go to this old pedophile to get it.
Yeah.
Basically,
And then as you got older, then it's money, right?
Yeah.
The church wants money
Well,
from
it's
you.
plenary indulgence were around in the 12th century, I think. As soon as the copper and the well rings, the soul from purgatory springs. It was part of the church doctrine to pay your way out of purgatory. You know what I mean?
In which, look, you can pay your way out of a lot of shit today, so maybe they were
feel
right.
like you should be able to do it.
Maybe they were right. We're just like, all right, well, fuck it. Where do you think we go when we die?
Oh man, I ask questions like that on mine too. I don't know. I think scientifically, for me, the things that would probably make the most sense would be some form of reincarnation or some like reconfiguration of that. Like the mystery part is your consciousness. Like it's really easy to break down the Cartesian, kind
Where
of
your
dualistic,
actual cells
separate,
go, yeah.
mechanistic processes of the body. You're like, okay, cool. Like you become fertilizer. I get it. Like all that stuff is reincarnated essentially. It's just like, more fancy language.
Right.
But it gets reintegrated back in the soil, becomes a tree, becomes a rat, becomes whatever. Yeah. The really slippery, mysterious part is like, what about that like deeper, you could call it spirit or consciousness or whatever it is. So for my very limited understanding of most everything, I feel like probably some form of reconfiguration or reincarnation makes the most sense. And I think it's just one circular ongoing process. I don't think there's some
but are you the same person?
Someplace.
Are you a different person?
I think you're always the same person. And if you go deeper enough, if you keep winding the layers back enough, there is no separation of person. Those are all stories and concepts. So am I the same person now as I will be in the future and was 1,000 years ago and will be 1,000 years ago and all that? I think probably yes, but that's because I'm congruent with you. Okay. And this room and that cup and the whole thing. And it's convenient to create an isolation that I exist within this skin bag, because then you can take care of the skin bag and you can do exercise and workouts and you feed yourself and you feed your family. Mm-hmm. But I think if you wind it back enough, and you wouldn't just live in that state of like non-duality, because that wouldn't be efficient at taking care of your individual self. But I think both of them are true. We're continuous with everything that ever is and ever was, and we're here in this single point. And the combination or the intersection between there, I'm still working on it.
Well, I mean, we're not gonna know the answer to that. But
no, we're gonna figure it out today.
Right?
We're gonna get a fucking answer. This is the show we do it on.
There's some interesting thought experiments though. Like if you were able to recreate your body as it is, including your brain, cell for cell, would that still be you? Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
what
one.
they're trying. That's what that's what rich old white guys are trying to do.
Yeah,
if you're rich and
it
old,
is, and I understand
and the theory,
why.
The theory behind like the teleportation devices that you see in science fiction is that basically you die each time and then you're recreated as a new thing with the same memories. You know what I mean?
Do you think that the attachment to wanting to have this specific consciousness to be able to hold on to that and place yourself into some space tube, refrigeration device to be able to come back in 200 years if we have the technology to bring that back? Do you think that that's a natural, healthy, just like, of course we would have that? Or do you think that's some deep fear of
I'm a hard no, dog, and I'll tell you why. Like, having been in a coma for 2 weeks, I was in a coma for 10 days. I lived those fucking days. I've said this on the show before. I lived all 24 hours of those days. Those are burned memories in my head. However, nothing in those days was actually real. Parts of it were, like parts of it I was in a hospital and things like that. But I think applying that for 10 days and like, dude, I'll have like bad flashbacks about some of those days. To this day, I was watching a movie 2 nights ago, The Survivor with Ben Foster. There was a scene where he plays a Holocaust survivor who goes on and escapes in boxes in the United States. There was fireworks going off overhead, and there was bombs that were coming in to his camp, his concentration camp, and he hits the ground in there, and it was like, there's flashbacks that I have that are similar to that about horrific experiences in this coma and everything else. And I think applying that to the long haul, if you're trying to download that memory and then try to recreate it, 100 years, 200 years later, whenever that's going to be possible.
Yep.
I think that's too much time that has elapsed, and something will be fucked up during the process of trying to get that back.
Well, maybe, right? But like, this is cellular memory is a thing. The reason that a fucking wolf knows it's a wolf without being taught by anybody is because the lessons learned by its ancestors, the ones that happen at the physiological level, they go to your children. There's no question about that. And religious texts forever have been trying to figure out why this is. The Bible says that the sins of the father will stay with the son for 7 generations and all this shit. They were close, right? They didn't understand how all this stuff worked. They knew something was happening, but they didn't know how to put their fucking finger on it. And that's what happens. You have genetic memory. You have there is, it's not just about what you're teaching your kids in real time. It's what you do with your life, right, before you procreate that really matters. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you there's a lot of stuff. Obviously, you want to raise your children to be good people, but if you want it, like if you're in any way invested in a future, and again, if you recognize this is true, then you're not just evaporating from Earth afterwards, right? You continue to be part of this process. If you want that process to continue to improve, what you do in life matters. The things that you choose to do with your life, what you dwell on, the things that you make important, that's going to matter. If you sit around eating stupid shit like a fat bastard for your whole fucking life, then your DNA is going to be riddled with diabetes for generations.
Look, I 100% agree, but I'm saying if you're loading your consciousness up into a hard drive or something like that, and you're waiting for, like Walt Disney chopping off his fucking head and putting it in a freezer, right? And you're waiting to come back to life later, I just think something fucked up will happen along the way where you just won't fully be 100% you, if that makes sense.
I think during the process of you postulating how to make that happen, you're going to miss out on the experience of life.
Yes.
See what I'm
Therefore,
saying?
I don't think about it.
Sure, I'm with that.
Because like yourself, like I want to enjoy every day, or I want to be there for my kids. And all. If I spent all of my time thinking about that, I would probably go insane.
Yeah, but you shouldn't spend all your time thinking about any one thing.
I don't.
That's like
it's different across the board, but this particular.
If you
thing
could, so
is what I'm
it's
talking
with
about.
anything. It's not what we do. It's why we're doing the thing that we're doing. So if you're doing this, it's just like, wow, what a crazy experiment that would be. Like, fuck it, like let's do it.
Yeah.
Chop my head off, put me in a freezer. Like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that for you. But if you're in a place of like fear or resistance around the transition out of this body or this life or this ego or the things that I've accrued and the wealth and the relationships and all of that, and you're living your life in a state of contraction, essentially like fear, and you're chopping your head off and putting it in a freezer as a means of protecting, like a way out.
You probably fouled the consciousness at that point. Like you would foul meat. Like if an animal sees you coming when you're going to kill it,
right?
No bueno.
That's exactly what I think
foul
too.
the consciousness.
Yeah. So if you
That's
were to come back to life 200 years later or whatever you were saying, I don't think it would be possible. Yeah, something would be off.
Well, the chances are that you're not going to come back to life like that at any point. Even if you were like your consciousness was preserved in your own brain, put on a hard drive, whatever it was. It's probably going to happen in the same way that it happens right now, which is that whatever it is that makes up consciousness is distributed amongst certain, like it's why I think that quantum entanglement works, right, at the physical level. It would probably be distributed amongst a lot of different types of materials, whether they're plants, animals, whatever, right? The thing that we can't imagine that or do, there's no experiment we can do with that in our lifetime. What we can do in our lifetime is try to look in the past, right? Like Assassin's Creed, kind of the genetic memory that they were able to drudge up. I'm not saying you could make that fucking show for real. What I'm saying is, chances are your consciousness as it is now is an amalgamation of many consciousnesses from before.
Yep.
Right? That's probably how that works, at least from what we know about the physical universe right now. So tapping into each one of those things, right, would be really, I think that would be a lot more beneficial.
Are you familiar with Rupert Sheldrake and morphic resonance?
Somebody actually just mentioned in the chat.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, so like me personally in my life, I've never experienced any form of like thoughts, vision, dream about a past life or reincarnation or anything else. Have you? Because you mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be that clear, though. Have you ever known how to do something or known a fact or something like that there's no reason you would know? Because that's the same thing, functionally speaking. It's not like you're going to see a video memory or hear an audio memory in your head and be like, oh, I was a fucking fish. I remember what that sounds like. No, but you might know this little fucking thing, this little fact, the same way that a cat knows to have its claws out 2 seconds after it's born.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's also an interesting thing. I think they call it something like organ transplant memory, perhaps, is what the term for it is. Yeah. Which that's just a fascinating thing in general. If you take the, some said organ out of one individual and place it into another individual.
We actually did a show about this, or not a whole show.
I gave 2 inches of my penis to a needy guy in China.
Nice.
No, it was the Is It Gay show we did. Remember?
Oh yeah,
because right. my question was if you
we did a whole show called Is It Gay?
Yeah, like if you needed a kidney and you got a kidney from a gay dude, are you now at least partially gay? If there's a gay gene, then technically you have some of the gay gene in you now, right?
Organ transplant memory would suggest you might start,
chugging dogs, man.
Yeah. So if you got your dong, like if a gay guy dies in a car accident, right, and you're missing your penis.
No, it doesn't have to be his dick. It could be any part of his body.
For the sake of it, right? You lose it in a blender, you slam it in a microwave, trying to put a hot pocket in there, and you're like, oh shit.
Or
I was naked and I slammed it in the microwave door.
Wild animal.
And then
accident.
you put that gay penis on your penis. You think you'd want to fuck other dudes?
Yeah,
I think you would. I think you'd have a responsibility to it.
Yeah, I think so.
That's all that penis ever knew.
I think it might be. I might be messing this up, but I believe it's sea slugs that if you chop them up into a blender, they'll reconfigure themselves as individual sea slugs.
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right.
And I would suggest that human consciousness is similar to that. I'm like fumbling like a drunk monkey, like how to put together the theory of everything, of like what is death and where are we going. But I think we're kind of like that in a way. And the story or concept that we have these individual consciousnesses that are disconnected from everything and we live inside this vacuum, I think is just like cultural indoctrination that's ultimately misdirected, but not bad. I think at some point, if we run that belief system, that would probably lead to a sensation of fear and resistance to like losing that consciousness.
For sure, yeah.
There's a thing that more Ram Dass shit. I apologize if I'm getting too philosophical.
Who gives
whatever.
a fuck, dude?
But one of the things that he said that I really love is who you think you are is vulnerable, but who you are is invulnerable. Who you think you are is vulnerable. So you think you're this separated, isolated body living in a vacuum. I have my family, I have my guns, I have my money. Like that's who you think you are. And as long as we think that and we run that program, we have every reason to live a life of resistance and defense. To be able to, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's really beautiful to have that gear. But to add just a little bit of awareness into like, okay, is there some deeper part of us? And so somebody like Ram Dass would probably suggest maybe eating some psychedelics or maybe doing some meditation retreat or maybe, doing a kirtan or, whatever you do to connect with something higher than just your own individual self. And so I think there can be it's very healthy for a person's consciousness, life, emotions, physiology, everything to kind of have a balance of both of those. Just explore the world of maybe I'm not just what I see in the mirror.
And do you apply this to everything you do in real life as well as like your clients and stuff with the Align method?
Yeah, but not in a very direct way. This is like I just got back from a week of drinking ayahuasca like 6 days ago. So my mind's definitely like in this.
Oh, you're still in it.
In this direction. Yeah. So there's that. And yeah, absolutely. Like why is if a person's expressing some type of postural pattern of, say scoliosis, for example. So that's like lateral deviation of the spine. There's lots of potential reasons why a person would potentially kind of like get all twisty and turny in their spine, especially around like adolescence. It typically happens most frequently with adolescent females. What's happening during that time?
You remember
frame?
the tests in school?
Oh yeah,
with the
pen?
It's
called the Horizon test.
Yeah.
I do it with clients. It's whatever. You don't really need to do the Horizon test. You can kind of just see what's happening with the person.
It felt like they were just touching young girls.
Yeah.
Well,
you can look.
I got a rubber glove at least, so at least they were sanitary.
Nobody's approaching me from behind with a rubber glove on. I don't care what the test is.
But within that, one could suggest that perhaps what's happening in that at one point the spine was perfectly upright, felt strong, safe, playful, exploratory, like you're like an open antenna, like cool, like wow, life. And then suddenly some little invocation of shame or guilt or fear or not wanting to be seen starts to emerge, wherever the heck it comes from. And then within that, ideally that person, if they don't want to be seen when they're in school or walking out in public or whatever it may be, you know, in an ideal world, maybe they could put like a refrigerator box over their body and just like, oh, just not be seen. I didn't go to school today. I just don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
You know, not realistic. You got to go to school. You got to do your thing. So you might start to kind of shrink up a little bit. You might kind of twist away a little bit. You might start to avoid eye contact with other people a little bit. Your hips might start to shift towards the door when you're having a conversation because you want to get the fuck out of the room.
83% of all communication is nonverbal. 83%.
Yeah, Albert Morabian came up with that. He suggested 93%, but you might be citing something else. He said 55% comes from body language. 38% he suggested comes from the tonality of our voice. So that comes again into like the frequency of sounds that we're emitting to each other. Words are just sounds. Like we're playing an instrument to each other that we've attached meaning to, and we're invoking images in each other through those words.
I mean, call your dog a fucking dummy and tell him you have treats in the same high-pitched, friendly tone, and that dog doesn't give a fuck what you just said.
Yeah, it cares about your body language, it cares about your tone. And so that's in a deeper way, that's how we're actually communicating.
And you can tell when two dogs are about to fight, too, like their shoulders slump down, and it's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah, the piloerection is a fancy term for their hair start to go up, and we still have that kind of like that vestigial part of ourselves, vestigial being like an old pattern that's not really that useful today, per se, but it's still pretty useful because we're still tracking it with each other.
Now, do you work out of on it?
No, kind of. I train there. Okay, I more like shoot content in quotations there because I like working out outside. I train at a place called Squatch. I was mostly here in Austin.
What's Squatch? I don't believe I've ever heard of it.
Sasquatch?
Yeah. You train with Sasquatch a lot?
It's just, it has an outdoor training area. I'm like a big advocate for sun. I think we need a lot of sun.
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
we're super vitamin D deficient, and we can't
as a
figure
culture.
Yeah, so like we had Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying on, his wife, super brilliant people. We had a 20-minute discussion about vitamin D and how everybody's supplementing with vitamin D right now, but that might not necessarily be the solution to this,
You
right?
can't out-hack biology and evolution. It's bullshit.
Well, I mean, if you had 100,000 years, you could, but we don't have 100,000 years. We have 80.
Right,
so,
exactly.
good luck.
So if things are changed so abruptly, I don't know exact numbers of how long it takes to create like genetic difference in a person, but I believe it's probably longer than, like Dan mentioned, of like the last 100 odd years of the lights shifting to be able to be exposed to blue lights at night, for example, or being exposed to just like an immense amount of chemicals and high fructose corn syrup and just having so much, our blood sugar being through the roof throughout the day.
But we haven't adjusted to the light yet, so that evolutionary change isn't even close to happening.
Yeah.
Like we haven't even adjusted to drinking milk yet, technically, right? We've been drinking milk for about 12, 15,000 years. We still haven't fully adapted to that. We're pretty good at it. Most people have some low level of lactose intolerance at this point, but it's not major. It's a very small minority of people that have major lactose intolerance now.
And a big issue with that, which I don't know a lot about this, to be honest, but from my understanding, because I've drank a lot of raw milk I used to own a share of a cow in Oregon because that was the only way you could legally do it. And I found drinking colostrum and raw milk and raw cream and all that stuff to be like incredible.
Yeah.
Like I felt like Superman after drinking it. And a big part of that is when you go through the pasteurization process and you're breaking down some of the enzymes like lactase that helps break down that lactose. And so when you're pasteurizing the milk, you're destroying a lot of the organisms that would actually, in the bacterias, that would actually help facilitate the digestion of that dairy.
Humanity is like a long story of us trying to outsmart ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We're the dumbest motherfuckers of all time.
And speaking of which, like even milk, just now that you brought it up, because I haven't thought about milk in years at this point, the reason why I felt powerful drinking it as a child was because there were so many commercials that drove it into your mind of like, milk does the body good. And you're like, awesome, man. I never really liked the taste of milk on its own. Any of them. Skim milk, whole milk, any of it.
You should pay attention, by the way, to the things that taste good to you because that's your body telling you, that, provided it's a healthy thing, that's your body telling you that you need more of it typically. That's how it works, right? Your body's a threat-benefit analysis engine.
Fruit, I love. Like fruit and vegetables, I love.
You're probably low on natural sugar and fiber. right?
Probably, yes.
That's probably what it's telling you. And to the other point that you were making before about the body language and posture and shit, a major piece of research that's relatively new from the mid-2010s, people that had been diagnosed with depression and other types of mood disorders were taken off their medication and instead given physical acts to do, right? So they would force a person, obviously some people were on placebo. They didn't stop taking their medicine altogether. Although some of them did because they were on a placebo, but anyways, people that were super depressed were forced, or asked rather, during the study to just force themselves to smile. Force yourself to smile. What they found was 80% increases in the production of good hormones in your body, right? Like your body knew that's just the act of making your face go up like this was congruent with releasing these chemicals.
Yep.
We think that the mind controls the body, and in some ways that's true, but it's not 100% true. Like the body physiologically controls the mind quite a bit. That's why exercise and fucking sun are so goddamn important.
That's like Sir William James. He's considered the father of modern psychology. That's a big aspect. He would probably, he was at least in part of pioneering those concepts in large part, many people believe our experience is kind of more of a top-down type thing. So whatever, happens inside of our mind, that drives the body. But what he would suggest, and, Amy Cuddy would suggest, and a lot of, I would, not to put myself at all in those categories, I just cite those people, but intuitively I feel very strongly this way. It's a bi-directional street. It's a two-way street. So thoughts, feelings, stories, all that informs the way that our body moves. And reciprocally, equally, you can move the body to inform thoughts, feelings, stories, and expression. And so what he would, I referenced this in my book, a specific quote from him. I don't know how he says it exactly, but he breaks it down as like if you're being chased by a bear, you actually move yourself into that state of fear. And so when you get chased by that bear, you don't just mentally in between your ears going like terror, I'm terrified. You have this contraction in your scalenes and your SCM, the muscles around your shoulders and your masseter and your jaw, and your shoulders roll forward to protect your vital organs and your neck. And if someone sneaks up behind you in a hallway, and if you have any experience, especially if you have any experience with any kind of like combat sports or anything, or not, you're going to bring your arms up into this archetypal fighting position.
Right.
You don't just stand there and say, I am terrified, and feel terrified. It's happening congruently. You cannot separate them. And so you can start to tap into this the term that you're referencing with like the smile study. They put a pencil in between people's mouths. This is one of the forms of research they do with it. And then when it's called postural feedback. So your posture sends a feedback to your endocrine system and your felt state. So when you put a pencil in between somebody's mouth, you force a smile like that. Suddenly you start to perceive things that aren't really even that funny to be kind of humorous. You just start to say, oh, that person, this is kind of cute. This is all right. The other direction they would do with that is they put a golf tee in between the people's eyebrows, and they had them hold the golf tee, so they put like resting bitch face. Suddenly they start to perceive the world as more obnoxious and more annoying and more just like, fuck that, I'm not into it.
That makes sense. Bob, I caught something out of my eye here. Is that the lamp right there?
That's the salt lamp, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So every girl that's
Big
had that
innovation.
is into butt stuff.
And can you lick this thing? I mean, I'm pretty.
You can lick whatever you want.
No, I mean, well, like a salt lick for a horse, because I'm pretty salt deficient. Like my sodium levels.
Or a deer.
Yeah, you could. You get a good salt lamp. You like that?
Just next to
Yeah,
bed.
that's no problem.
Like during sex, there's like a little water bottle and you lick the salt so it like gets absorbed in the bloodstream.
Well, I mean, you just gotta, get some electrolytes.
Do you guys use magnesium?
I do,
yeah. I take it every day.
That's another one of those things that it's largely deficient in modern day soil because of largely from monocropping.
You take pills?
I do capsules.
Yeah, that's one thing you can, like most vitamins are kind of bullshit to be honest, but that's one thing you can, because that's how it was delivered in the first place, right? Like you may as well just be picking up dirt.
And so to relate it back to kind of like a movement conversation, not that we need to have that conversation, but that's one of those things that in modern culture we're largely deficient in because it's literally not in the soil. Like we've stripped it from we can't get it so well. So it's like, okay, we need to supplement that. So within that, you could have perhaps similar conversations with the way that we move as a culture. So coming back into like the whole postural feedback, depression is the #1 leading cause of disability worldwide right now. So literally, I'm just too sad to come to work.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
As that's happening, and a big thing is people need to talk about it. Like there's a lot of, I have close friends that are super successful, like amazing athletes, people that you guys probably even know that were secretly suicidal, like on the edge of, and now openly and talking about it. But it's like, I never would have known.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have this, I'll get back to the movement thing. I'm going to tie that back to the way that we move and posture and all that stuff. But to be able to have that open, vulnerable conversation of like how we're actually feeling as opposed to how we think we want people to perceive us, it opens up a more honest, real conversation, and I think can actually save people's lives, because I think a lot of people are, a lot sadder and a lot more, they're like, people need help.
I agree. And look, it's what you specialize in is movement and everything else. And posture. I want to bring up what you brought us in today.
Yeah.
This is a bed of nails.
Yeah. Sadhu nail board.
Just gonna, what's the name of it?
Yeah. Sadhu nail board.
Sadhu
is
nail
what
board.
that's called.
Okay.
Yeah. Gravity Mind is
All right,
the
so
company that makes that.
there's 2 of them.
Yeah, you stand on them.
Yeah, okay, barefoot?
Yeah, or socks if you're if you're a bitch.
So we had a debate here on the show whether or not this would go through your feet. You're saying no. Giorgio said yes.
Your feet. Yeah, definitely won't go through your feet.
100%.
100%.
So if you just,
Without a doubt.
if we just stood on it.
1,000,000%, no problem.
Really?
Yeah, I could stand on it and put something on my back.
And put somebody on your back?
Probably not you.
Now I feel like... Why? I'm very dainty and thin, dude. I don't understand. Just because I'm a goddamn beef castle.
Yeah,
you know?
you are a beef castle.
Need some more nails for that.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
disperse that weight.
Yeesh. I'm running 225 right now, so that'd be tough.
Oh, good.
That'd be tough.
We're about the
what are
same
you?
weight.
Well,
220.
you're fucking jacked, and I think you're taller than me.
6'5",
which is a goddamn
6'4",
shock.
6'4.5".
Yeah, I'm 6'3.5". So like, yeah, you're.
What does that mean about us that we include the ½ inch?
I'm kissing 6'4", so like I think I'm taking away a ½ inch.
Oh, you're humble.
I think you're adding one.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but I'm humble and you're not.
Yeah,
like that's the difference.
Deeply
in it.
insecure.
Now I got to fucking try this out. Is there a wide, Giorgio?
Yeah, we got to try.
I got to try now.
You got to try.
Is it? I have to go in socks because I'm just.
No, go
I've
barefoot.
never done anything like
don't
this.
be a bitch. You got this.
You think so?
Do it barefoot.
Yeah,
Russ.
that's no problem. Yeah, don't go socks.
Giorgio. All right, fuck
Dude,
it,
you're.
I'll do it if you do it.
Yeah, go
I'll
to
do
the
it first.
I'll give it a go. Let's
Yeah.
go. I'll do it. I don't give a shit. Dan, you can continue the conversation while
I think you should put your dick and balls in between those. And
Now that I've done. So, and that's just strength training and everything else.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a whole
have
other
you
conversation.
Have you seen any of like the monks taking shots to the balls, like taking sledgehammers to the balls?
yeah, I mean,
Oh,
they're,
yeah.
they're basically like have taught themselves to retract their balls up into the fucking pelvic cavity.
Oh,
That's what
the
that is. Yeah.
move.
There's
So
no
you're
way.
you're
Yeah.
basically kicking a puss at that point, which
Yeah, I
I've
get-
done quite a bit of that.
No, I get that.
All right.
Respect.
So it's on the floor.
Yep. It's not bad.
It's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
Well,
I'm gonna go upright. So you stand upright, correct?
That's correct.
Just hold on to the desk as you
Yeah,
do
I mean,
it.
I'll
Hold
I'll
on.
stand on there.
So you
if
hold on to
want.
the desk.
Yeah, I'll stand on there for the duration of this conversation if you want me to.
Look, we know you're fucking a Superman that is out of this world, and you're not one of
Clearly
us.
deeply
That's
insecure
fine. I'm
with
not. I'm a
suggestions like
normal fucking dude.
Yeah, I get it.
With a brilliant mind
Brilliant.
and a just a big dumb dick walking around in this world.
No,
Like,
I get it. Here we go.
it's this is very. So we were talking about it before the show. It's very.
can stand upright on this.
You
Yeah.
stand up, right? No problem.
It's very similar to the sauna and ice bath
Yeah.
situation. I mean, basically what you're doing is you're exposing yourself to extreme situations to show your brain that you can. Like, it doesn't even matter how difficult it is. It's just
doesn't feel great.
no,
Now
it's not.
now take your hands off. Lean back.
I can't do it. I can't.
Try with socks. Try with socks.
Well, that's the point. It's not that you can or can't. It's that you're not doing it.
Well, I mean,
Because you can do it.
1,000,000% you can
But
do
the
it.
fear in me is too intense.
Yeah.
Well, that's the purpose, is to overcome that fear, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we talked about with Brett and Heather. It's what I talked about last week with our guests on American Party. It's learning how to take being an adult human being is the process of taking managed risk, right? managing risk, take it. If you don't take any ever, you're agoraphobic, right? If you take too many, you're fucking, you're
gonna
dead.
die. Yeah.
So
I've gone this far.
Yeah.
Learning to drive with the fear.
yeah, like fear is only one part of the puzzle. Like, yeah, I'm afraid, but is it really that dangerous, or is this like something that my brain is telling me?
And then culturally, we typically will glorify those that got so.
Does not feel great.
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel good. They got that flew so close to the sun, but didn't melt and self-destruct.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the game.
Yeah, you want to go one like layer below Icarus,
Just
basically,
ride
like
that edge where you still
Icarus.
maintain your family and your friends and your relationships, and you're not just a complete psycho.
Yeah.
But it's like, wow, that person, like, they're ballsy.
It's really hard to get there, though, without wanting to be psycho, because like you're on the edge and you
That's
see the
edge.
people.
That's the game.
Yeah, but that's because socially we haven't been conditioned to understand why you need to take those managed risks, right?
I think that there's some inherent drive to do that for the sake of evolution of the species. And that's what's arrived us to the point that we're at right now.
Yeah.
And so it's actually,
But-
like in you.
But so the thing that we have admired about, especially over the last 100 years, about athletes specifically, is overcoming that adversity, right? Whether it's injury or just all the other great athletes trying to beat you and you fucking dominated them or whatever it is. And now we routinely congratulate people for giving up. Like that,
Yeah, right.
the tennis player.
That's what all these trophies
Jesus
were for, probably,
fucking
right?
Yeah, well, I won championships. Like,
These are like
I'm not a quitter.
11th place, 5-foot trophies.
Nope. These are first place because I'm a champion and I don't quit.
Okay.
By the way, oddly enough, I felt better after getting off of there.
Yeah.
I don't really know why, and I don't know if that's part of it, but being on there definitely hurt.
Because
and it was
life is a sliding experiential scale, right? Like you don't know what hot is unless you know what cold
Right.
is.
But does it release something in
Yes.
you?
Opiates.
Opiates.
It does.
Yeah,
So that's what this is?
You're a little bit higher now than you were
That's exactly
25
how I
seconds
feel.
ago.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
But is it because I was in so much pain that I'm just
That's correct.
You know,
okay?
if you did,
it's just the gratification that I'm not in pain anymore.
Your body likes you, it cares about you, and it wants you to survive. And so if you go through some scenario, say you're a zebra and you're being attacked by a lion, that zebra, as they're going through, I've never been a zebra, I've never been attacked by a lion, but so says books, Robert Sapolsky and various different scientists and researchers that look into these things.
Sure.
They get juiced up with a whole abundance of opiates during that time frame that they essentially go into this like eyes glazed over psychedelic. They're now they're suddenly a zebra sitting up in a tree watching themselves be mauled by the lion. Not that big of a deal. Once they come to the point of like, okay, pain doesn't serve me anymore. I'm going to go over here and kind of like almost disconnect from the body temporarily. And so in that process, they're literally going through like a kind of like a DMT type experience.
So do
and
people?
there's some theories that that's what happens when you die as a human being, right? Like your brain just floods itself with all these chemicals to disassociate from the pain, right? Like
It's painful.
The pain.
I can understand that.
The pain is meant to be a signal, like, hey, we need to stop this activity, whether we just leave or force whatever it is to stop. But if once your brain figures out like this isn't going to stop, we're dead, it brain fucks up. Right?
So do people rent you out in life? Like
Sometimes.
Like
Kind of.
a
what
prostitute?
would
What do you mean?
Yeah, like I hate to say like a spiritual advisor or a movement coach.
Kind of.
How would you describe what you do for a living, and how do people pay you for that besides books?
Online programs. I do happy ending massages.
Do you?
So that's Venmo.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore because now they're fucking. The IRS is watching that shit.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Are they really?
Cash,
Cash or Bitcoin.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a combination of things. The main thing that I'm interested in is teaching people how to take care of themselves. So that's in the form of online programs. So we have Line Method online program. We have a Line community where we have, we just started. It's about 1,100 people in there now, and it's just comparing and contrasting ideas and accountability, being supported to each other. And I advise or support with educating people on how to take care of their own bodies. So my background is mostly in manual therapy. So Rolfing is one of the things.
Explain Rolfing to the audience.
Yeah.
Rolling on the floor laughing.
Yeah, exactly. So Rolfing is the last name of a gal called Ida Rolf. It's mostly based around osteopathy or like bone setting could be another term for it. It's specifically focusing around working with connective tissue or fascia. So a lot of the stuff that we've heard, like personal trainers and yogis and things of the sort, fascia has become like a sexy term. A lot of that originated with Rolfing or structural integration. And so a big part of my history working one-on-one with clients is either physical training or manual therapy. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of an amalgamation. Why that shifted and why it may be relevant for other people listening would be I got tired, like many people do, of getting these great results with people. People come in, they have shoulder issues or neck pain or back pain or hip stuff, whatever it is. Amazing results. Wow, oh my God, like this is so awesome. And then in 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks, it's pretty much the same scenario. And I'm sure many people have had that experience with themselves. Where you go see a therapist, wow, the hip pain's gone, the back pain's gone, and then it lasts for like 5 days.
Right.
And so for me, I got so tired of doing that thousands of times essentially, that I became more interested on like, what's your lifestyle? How do you inhabit your body when you're at home? How do you inhabit your body when you're at work? What's your sleeping schedule like? What's your dietary schedule like? What are your relationships like? What's your thoughts like? Because all of that's informing the tonicity of your musculoskeletal system, all the tensional fibers in your body. If you're stressed out and you're tensed, mm-hmm. then that's going to change the composition of your body, essentially.
Yeah, and bringing this back to what we were talking about before, these are like, when we talk about pre-fight indicators and things like that, just the posture that naturally happens as somebody is introduced to fear or stress or whatever it is. That's a real thing, right? People hear terms like this and like, oh, that's just some fucking I don't believe in make-believe, right? Like these are real physiological stress factors. Like the reason that chiropractic works for a short time and doesn't, because it addresses symptoms but not root causes. And that's what a lot of functional fitness over the last 50 years or so that people have been into it have addressed a lot of symptoms and haven't addressed the cause. And the cause is always going to be your fucking environment,
yep.
right? And how you address it.
Yep.
That is the only way to solve any of these issues you might have.
Yeah, that's like Bruce Lipton. He wrote a book called Biology of Belief that really kind of changed my perception when I was like 16 or 17 is when I read it. Mm-hmm. I recently did a podcast with him a couple years ago. I got to go out to his house in California, and he like gave me a jar of weed. It was like a whole really amazing thing. If you're not familiar with Bruce Lipton, he's great. He's one of he'd probably be the pioneering thinker in the field of epigenetics. So epigenetics being like, you don't just, your genetic expression isn't just what you've been endowed with by your parents, but it's a product of what you've been endowed with times your environmental conditions.
Like think about a stem cell as a human cell that can turn into anything, but it knows what to turn into based on what it's in proximity to.
Yep.
It's the same thing with you and your genetic DNA or your genetic memory and your environment.
Well, and I also believe it's, work ethic as well, right? If you train yourself to do X, whatever that is, either it's physical or mental or whatever it is, you'll get used to and conditioned to operating at that page count or that weight class or whatever.
And it becomes a lifestyle.
Yes.
Like it's like
100%.
It needs to become who you are, not a thing you do. Like that's the big difference between Laird Hamilton and Kennedy and all that. This isn't a thing that they do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a class that they take.
Right.
Laird Hamilton is Laird Hamilton every fucking moment. Yeah. And he's also lots of other things, but like that mentality, it's when he wakes up in the morning, it's what he's thinking about, it's the way that he sits and stands and talks and breathes and eats and all of that, it's ingrained into his identity structure. So if you have some type of, shitty, hunched over, shitty in quotations, I'm kind of just being cute, but like hunched over, collapsed, depressive postural patterns, or diabetes, or brain fog, or whatever the thing is, or you just I just feel like a fucking loser.
Yeah.
I just don't feel I'm not worth anything. That's your story. How do you possibly express for your movement, or how do you possibly expect for your movement to express, and your postural patterns to express, and people to perceive you, and that creates a feedback. Mm-hmm. So now the way that people look at you, there's kind of this reconfirmation of who you thought you already were. And you kind of cement that idea, that construct. And so starting off and saying, how do we get into the actual baseline story of who you think you are? And if we can do that, the way that we do that, the reason I bring up Bruce Lipton is the way that he suggests. He's a cellular biologist, like one of the, probably the most preeminent, thought leaders in the space on the planet around cellular biology. And what he suggests, I don't know anything about cellular biology other than what, he's told me for the most part, is that if you want to change the cell in a petri dish, you don't do anything to the cell itself. You change the constitution of the petri dish. Right? So if you change the actual constitution that it exists in, the cell just changes. Mm-hmm. So
whether it's heat or exposure to proteins or whatever, right?
It'll form to the dish.
It'll form to the dish.
Right.
Yeah.
We are forming to the dish.
Yeah.
So if the dish that we exist in is one where we're not getting natural light cycles, we're not getting, healthy food that's, ideally from the ground or from some healthy animal that wasn't, living on a bunch of antibiotics and grains and kind of just this weird aberrant existence where it's being shit on by other animals and it's like being propped up because its legs can't support it, and then it's being shot in the face and like, there you go.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What do you expect?
Yeah.
The outcome to be from that? So it's not about that person that's the constitution of the petri dish that they exist in. They don't need to do more muscle-ups. Muscle-ups might get them to the point to start to have the initiative to want to create the change. Nothing against just exclusively exercise. Exercise is a great lever. Nutrition's a great lever. Environment's a great lever. All of these are levers. So there's no villainization of like, oh, cool, like the Align method, all we care about is the environment. All we care about is the way that we think and, all of that kind of like bottom-up type thinking. It's just kind of shining new light on that bottom-up perspective because we already have so much top-down.
How long are your average sessions with a client?
Well, it depends. If I'm training somebody, it's usually like 60 minutes to an hour, pretty much 60 minutes to 90 minutes.
Okay.
But then a lot of times it depends. Like I've lived with people. I've gone on like movie sets and such and, lived on the set essentially. Mm-hmm. So then I'm just with the actor the entire day, just kind of waiting around, like picking my nose and,
whatever. It's boring as shit.
Scrolling Instagram and stuff.
It's boring as shit.
Yeah. But then when they're ready to go, it's like, okay, what do we got?
Yeah.
So it really varies, but most of what I do presently is more around creating educational content on the internet to help people be able to take care of themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, movie set's about 20 minutes of fun and then 13 hours of just sitting around and waiting.
It's such an interesting experience living on a movie set. I mean, you don't live on the movie set, but essentially you live on the movie set and you go back to the hotel or whatever.
14 to 16 hours a fucking day.
Yeah, it's like a summer camp.
It's
for real.
It's literally like a small Burning Man. You know, or it's like a festival. Or it's almost like a planet in and of itself. And then suddenly one day, planet's over.
Yep. See you later.
Evaporated.
Well, I'll call you. I'll call you. No, you won't. I'll never see you again. You're a fascinating dude, man. This has been a blast of a show. This is the point in the show. We get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
Oh, geez. Drinkin' Bro of the Week. I mean, I would say maybe in some ways, I think most of the females that I've been like vulnerable with, because that's been like a kind of terrifying thing for me in my life.
Yeah, because I don't see a ring. You're not married.
No. But that's like kind of like the big like gauntlet of change for me is vulnerable connection with gals. And so they've probably had the greatest, one of the greatest impacts on me, like creating pretty strong change in my life. So I would say women as a whole, my mom, my girlfriend, just the women that have been relevant in my life.
You think you'll get married?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when exactly. I've got a lot of resistance around it. I have a lot of resistance around commitment and like fear of missing out.
Why?
I think probably some fear of like deeper vulnerability and then probably being hurt or abandoned. Probably if I was like really honest, but I don't know that in like an absolute way. That's just my suspicion. There's like some deeper like, oh, I don't want to get hurt, so I'll kind of like diversify my bonds.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Wu-Tang.
Yeah. Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
You got it.
You can't slip a quote by me from any form of comedic entertainment.
Got to diversify those bonds, dude.
Yeah, but I'm fighting it. I'm like witnessing my small self doing that, and there's echoes of the larger self that's like, I see what you're doing.
How long you been with this girl?
Kind of, sort of, for like a year and a half, but more specifically like a month and a half.
Okay.
Where we're actually like, essentially there's the caveat of like either we, complete monogamy, no negotiation around it or nothing.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, like complete monogamy is what is
Do you mind if I ask you how old you are?
Turned 35 in a month.
Oh, okay. So you're fine. If you were older, I'd say, probably not going to happen.
Lost cause, yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause I tell Delco all the time, I'm like, hey, dude, that 35 to 37 range is the sweet spot where it's like, at that point, you should have, especially a guy like you, I'm sure you've run through everybody in your 20s and everything else. Unless there's two contortionists from fucking Tucson, like, there's probably nothing left for you to do.
Right.
Especially when you're bros with Arby Marcus. So it's like, you're good at this point if you want to settle down.
Yeah, it's strange.
You're not going to miss out on anything, probably.
It's strange.
Do you think you're going to miss out on something?
I think there's still like a deep kernel of that in there. But I think, like I said, if I'm really honest, the fear of missing out part would be more of like the protective kind of like ego part. And then I think that the deeper vulnerable part would be not wanting to be hurt. Okay. And so wanting to kind of like, okay, I'll go in, but I don't want to go all the way in because I don't want to be devastated.
Sure. All right. Aaron Alexander, the Align Method. It's out now. Go ahead.
There's another Drinkin' Bro of the Week.
Drink Bro of the Week.
Yeah. Dulesky, it's his birthday yesterday.
Oh, fuck.
Craigers?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Happy birthday.
That's right. He kept saying on Ross Passion Revolution, he's like, I want you to have the child on May 15th. And I was like, why? Why? It's his birthday. No. My child doesn't operate on your birthday, Craig. I love you, but
you tried to force it on
Cinco de Mayo.
Mayo.
Yeah. That's a party holiday. That's different. I wanted to party forever. You know what I'm saying?
Another nicotine
yeah,
thing.
do whatever you want.
What's
That's
your
Lucy.
recommendation? The mango?
It's Lucy.co, by the way. Everybody has those.
I like the
Everybody
cinnamon.
Pops in. Cinnamon's my jam on that.
Yeah.
on
I'm already
Lucy,
going mangoes too.
Yeah.
I'm too far in.
Promo code Drinkin' Bros
yeah.
at Lucy.co. Fascinating conversation. You're an interesting dude, man.
Thanks, man. Likewise.
Yeah, I'd love to fucking hit the town with you single, but that's just not going to happen.
Not happening.
No, you'll have to pick off one of these guys. I think you could mentor probably Giorgio.
I'm not the guy to be mentoring anybody in relationships. If you got some hip issues, let's talk.
Nobody with a good relationship has ever mentored anybody in a relationship. It's all
Great point.
It's all single women on the internet who hate men.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Every thoughtful Instagram post you read from a girl is in the worst relationship of all time.
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason to be writing about it if you're.
No, absolutely not.
Exactly. People who are enjoying their lives live their lives. It's the same. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like if some girl posted a picture of her butthole in 3 paragraphs about how to choose the right man, she has not chosen the right man.
No. She
At
she
no
wants
point
you
in her
to stare at
life.
her butthole.
Yes.
She wants the right man to stare at her butthole and get married, but chances are that's not going to happen. Tell everybody where they can find you.
People probably just go to Instagram. So Align Podcast is the Instagram handle.
Okay.
And I host a podcast, obviously called Align Podcast. If people are interested in going deeper into conversations like this, we just created the Align community, like I mentioned, and that's at alignpodcast.com/community. It's totally free, and it's just a place that we kind of connect in a more, I don't know, whatever. Go check it out. It's like a more deeper connection than just social media, because I don't necessarily going to be responding on social
Gun
media.
to head, let's say nobody's listening to the show. Top guest, what episode would they go to?
Man, I mean, I like Bruce Lipton a lot because he was like a childhood hero of mine. I would say start off with the Bruce Lipton episode.
Okay, cool.
It's always
it'll
really
blow your
interesting
mind.
when you fucking find people who have deep roots and like experimental science, right? Who are very anti-industrial science. And when it comes to medicine, that means people who are very rooted in actually conducting experiments, who hate pharmacology, right? Or at least American or Western pharmacology, right? Like anybody like that, I'll listen to because they're probably onto something. I mean, we've been like that shit with your feet a minute ago. He's talking about your body releases a little bit of opiates.
Yeah.
Like if you went this weekend and did Ibogaine, right? Flushed out your opiate receptors and then came back and did it a week later, you would be probably 40% higher from doing that, right? Because your body is now adjusted back to the way it's supposed to be. I don't mean you're a fucking pillhead or anything, but American human beings have been fed weird drugs are for like since the time we were children.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And our bodies are just like, fuck now.
Are you guys familiar with? I know you're trying to wrap up, and I apologize.
No, it's fine. Look, I walked on a bed of nails today. I wasn't
but
expecting that.
There's a guy that's interesting as a metaphor and a literal person called Ignaz Semmelweis, and he's the guy that he was a doctor that he essentially was the first to suggest that when he was delivering babies, and they would go in between working with deceased individuals, and then they'd go and be delivering babies, the doctors, and he was suggesting that it would be wise to wash our hands in between working with cadavers and delivering babies, because I think there's some type of something, I don't know, bacteria or some type of thing that's causing these babies and these mothers to get sick. He was completely ostracized and completely ridiculed because it didn't fit the modern present mold of science. And now there's a thing called Semmelweis syndrome, which is essentially when you're a person with this wild, crazy, heretical idea that is in fact true. It just hasn't been opened up to being true yet, but it might be in like 5 to 10 to 30 years. And Semmelweis syndrome is when a person goes crazy because they're ostracized by the tribe. And then what happened with him is he went to a mental institution and ended up killing himself. And then I believe after he was already like deceased and passed, they realized like, oh fuck,
The germ theory of disease.
Semmelweis was onto something.
Like the foundation of modern medicine, the germ theory of disease is because of that guy who killed himself. The guy who invented fucking computers, right, was killed because he was gay.
And so if you're living in a crazy world and you feel a little crazy, you might not actually be as crazy as you think you are. Or at least as crazy as the world is suggesting that you are.
We love to end the show on dark notes like that.
Dude, that's my shit.
Somebody killing themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So we're getting out of here on it, okay?
That's a good time to drop
I
it.
appreciate it. Check out Aaron's book, The Align Method. It is out everywhere. Thanks for being here, man. We greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
For D'Anthony Holloway, Aaron Alexander, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.